本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？見えないよ。
What's good, Internet? It is November 7th, 2016. This is Austin Walker coming to you live from the bunker. Joining me here in the bunker again, Danielle Riendo.
Hello, it's good to be in a bunker.
Yeah, November
Right
7th.
now?
It sure is. Also joining me on the line, Patrick Klepek from the field.
I know everyone gets real nervous on N7 day.
That's why everyone's nervous. Mass Effect stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I feel like there's an energy in the air that is... I saw someone on Twitter, I forget who it was now, describe this as like feeling a little bit like Christmas Eve and the day before a major surgery combined into one.
Yep. It sure is.
And, whew, how are y'all feeling?
Scared.
Look, I'm feeling great because I watched the most amazing Twitter video and I was describing it to the both of you and then you stopped me so I could re-describe it.
It's like, stop, I want to hear it fresh. Give it to me fresh on the recording.
So if people have probably heard of the documentary series Planet Earth, which a number of years ago, but it's a series of just really incredible documentary footage of just nature. Like they use these amazing lenses to catch insects and just Earth in like really like amazing ways. Like they do storytelling. Like it's not just giving you information. Like they show you stories of what's happening out in nature. And so I guess the new one is airing. I was unaware of the sequel to Planet Earth, but there's a clip going around where this and this is going to sound horrifying as I begin to describe it, but. This baby iguana, like this new hatchling, somehow, I don't know the context of the clip, but it opens with the hatchling being stuck in sort of like this kind of rocky, sandy area, and there's this a snake around it kind of eyeing it. And, snakes can't see very well, but, respond to movement and, are very sensitive to that. And so the hatchling is staying extremely still. It is not moving. It is waiting for the snake to get far enough away where it then just begins sprinting for its life and going at a speed that is obviously amped up by the slow motion and the music, but like it is as though it is being chased by a demon. And what you then soon...
Sorry, we're watching it live as you
right now.
narrate this.
Yes, and you soon realize it is not just one snake, but they are in a snake den. There are dozens.
There are so many snakes.
Oh my
Yes,
God.
Look at all these
harrowing.
snakes.
It's harrowing, and I don't really want to say I will relieve your anxiety. It does not die. It makes it through. It escapes. But I don't want to necessarily give you the beat by beat of what happens during that escape because it is better than any action film you will watch and is incredibly terrifying. But I will at least let you know that it ends well, at least as well as nature goes. I'm sure the iguana will be killed by something else in the cruelty of nature. But at least in this clip, it is. It made me anxious, but then ends so wonderfully that in terms of how you can start your week for a week like this, there are a few better ways, I think.
I like it as a metaphor because it isn't all smiles. Like it's a rocky, dangerous world filled with snakes.
It is actually like the arc of that video is actually incredibly accurate. In which like you think you're okay, you go to the final sprint, you almost lose it at the finish line, and then you just barely make it to the other side. But did you? What did you lose in the process?
Right, exactly. You discovered a lot about the world you were in. You thought the world was one way. It was another way.
It was filled with snakes, really.
Things were easier before you knew you were surrounded by snakes. We all just thought it was like, of course there's a snake. Of course there's a snake or two. But you feel like mostly iguanas out there.
Right.
Turns out, a lot of hidden snakes.
You're swimming in a sea of snakes. Good Lord.
And the lesson is to just not move.
I guess so, right? Or it's like don't move or run as fast as you fucking can.
Nothing in between.
Yeah. God. So is that this is a very selfish question. Do you know if Planet Earth 2 is coming out on 4K?
Oh.
I have to I probably in Blu-ray form,
right?
But the big hurdle for 4K, and 4K is obviously in the news because the PlayStation 4 Pro launches later this week. Yeah, like streaming services don't really do 4K. Like Netflix, well, I guess Netflix does with very specific things.
Amazon Prime
iTunes has no 4K.
Amazon Prime has very limited 4K also. I got a 4K TV. So they sent kind of an evaluation review unit of the PS4 Pro, which I left in the office over the weekend because I didn't anticipate getting a 4K TV that quickly. I was like, oh, maybe next week I'll try to get it. And then so I'm in New York, which means like I know a guy. Like it's a thing that happens when you live in New York. This is a thing that happens. Like you gotta sometimes you know a guy. You know a guy with a deal.
Make sure he doesn't Jersed you.
He didn't Jerse me. Don't worry. He hooked it up, and he like saved me $300 on a nice TV. And it's the first time I've had this is the first time I had a TV with a remote control that's worked in 7 years.
Good. Good.
It's like I've been using like a little 27-inch TV for the last 7 years. This is the first like decent TV I've had. And then I got it. I was like, I'm gonna set it up, and I set it up, and I made room for it, and it's really pretty. And then I was like, all right, what can I watch on this 4K TV? And it's like, oh, nothing. Like, basically nothing. And so I started Man in the High Castle, which is Amazon Prime, and that's in 4K.
Okay.
But it just looked weird. It looked like very strange because I'm not used to seeing things that crisp. And like, I want something like a Planet Earth to like break in the TV with and like get used to seeing stuff like that.
You want that baby iguana.
I want that baby
in beautiful
iguana.
4K.
I want this is like a sloth or something swimming that I'm looking at. I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
That's what I want. But I don't know if it's out on 4K yet.
What size TV did you get?
40 inches, which is...
That's about what you need to get to appreciate 4K,
that is the smallest 4K TV there is. That is what I look... So I live in New York. I have like a decent-sized apartment, but I don't have like... My setup is such that it would be a pain to have a TV that this TV had to fit on the desk, is what I have to say. So I have like a decent monitor now, which I bought recently, and then I have a 4K TV. It's also on the desk as a second monitor, and that will also be like hooked up to the PS4.
Sure.
And so that was a situation where I was like, oh, I would love if I could get like a 32-inch, but I also understand that that's like not how 4K works. Like,
yeah, you'd be paying a lot of money for something that wouldn't display on your TV in an appreciable way.
Exactly. And so I've tried a couple things out. Like I did the thing that you get when you get a new piece of hardware, which is like, I'm going to load The Witcher up. I'm going to load up Skyrim.
Perfect.
I'm going to load up Mafia 3 at highest settings. Like I just jump from game to game to game until it's something that's like, oh yeah, this is pretty. And a couple of things definitely were like, dog, you need more RAM. Like, you have a great graphics card now. You have a good TV, but like your computer can't just handle anything.
You can start because you have a 1070.
I have a 10. No, I have a Titan GTX.
Okay, right. So at that point you're just going to be hitting CPU and memory limits.
Yep. So I'll get there. Have you been? So that's what I did this weekend. That's the thing. Is like this weekend coming into the election, I was like, I need to distract myself with stuff. So I did a lot of tabletop game prep, and I did a lot of shopping for a TV. And I found a guy that cut the shopping in half.
You found the guy. Yeah.
What have you two been up to like get your mind ready for this week and relaxed, and or to not get relaxed? I don't know what your mental state is. Maybe you're like jacked in. You're just like, give it to me straight.
I went to my parents' like tiny lake house and just got away from the internet and video games. And like I sort of like took a break from everything and was like, I'll come back to this, and where I can't avoid it, but I still managed to play and finish Titanfall 2's campaign and start the first hour of Infinite Warfare. But other than that, I did my best to just go enjoy the last decent weather that we're probably going to get out here in the Midwest and deal with the crushing cold and everything else from here.
Crushing reality. Well, you did write a really cool story that went up this weekend as well. That I read it and I took a look at it and I made the amazing header for it. But I wanted to just hear a tiny bit more about what made you want to write that story. It was about the '90s Senate hearings on violence in video games, and I'm fascinated because I didn't know much about this until I sort of saw your story.
Yeah, we when we were kind of conceiving what sort of like the first couple weeks of sort of leading up to Waypoint's launch and then the actual launch, like one of the ideas we had was taking this concept of the games we love and then picking two of those games and then finding one to sort of write like why that game means something to us, and then another that was let's maybe try and find an original angle for this, whether it's reporting or doing sort of a retrospective And we became so busy that just there was no real way for everyone to contribute something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, that kind of slipped through. But I managed to kind of, what I became fascinated with was, the games that really defined sort of my pre-teenage years were games like Doom, and which I did write about, and then the other was Mortal Kombat. I distinctly remember Mortal Monday, which was this big promotional thing for the console release of the original Mortal Kombat. I remember, getting into so basically, when growing up, most of the cool kids own Nintendo, and the losers own Genesis machines.
Disagree.
Which is like a very crude way of looking at it. But that's that we made fun of people that own Sega machines. Like we looked down on them because the better, cooler games were on Super Nintendo and on NES. And with Mortal Kombat, it was one of the few opportunities for those kids to stab us in the throat. Because Mortal Kombat, on the original one at least, on Super Nintendo, Nintendo forced Acclaim, who ported the games to consoles, to nerf the violence. So the fatalities were outright changed, so that most of the violence was removed, or it just was not nearly as egregious as it was in the arcade. The blood was turned to sweat. That if you changed the setting, you could make it red sweat, so it got like a little bit closer. And even the Genesis version was toned down, but there was a cheat code you could put in that made it arcade accurate. So this is a long way to say I was looking for sort of angles on that I wouldn't have considered when I was younger, and it would certainly not be the 1993 Senate hearings in which Joseph Lieberman was essentially pushing the FEC to investigate video games, and this idea that maybe video games were going to have to be regulated by the government as technology was making video games more realistic. And while we may not think of Mortal Kombat or Night Trap as realistic in 2016, at the time when you could put actual actors into video games and you could interact with them, that was a step for a lot of people that made them uncomfortable, or at least it was shocking in a way that, like, I don't blame people for being like raising an eyebrow. And so what I ended up doing was, I was hoping to talk to one of the two executives that spoke on behalf of the video game industry from both Nintendo and Sega. That wasn't really possible, but I spent a number of years working with Perrin Kaplan, who was, sort of the head of communications for Nintendo for a very long time. She was there through a lot of the 80s and up through or a lot of the early 90s and up through the launch of the Wii. And so I met and have worked with her for a number of years. And so I sent her a message asking, were you involved in this? And, she, as it turns out, comes from politics. It's where she met her husband. She still does politics, sort of PR stuff to this day. And she was, part of Nintendo's chief strategist for how to approach Capitol Hill, how to make sure you got folks like Senator Lieberman to think of video games more holistically than just as Mortal Kombat and Night Trap. And so I basically talked to her about Nintendo's strategy and how they kind of painted Sega as a villain on Capitol Hill, in which was, Perrin Kaplan made the argument to me that it wasn't a marketing thing. I think she may be looking on that as in slightly rose-colored glasses. I agree with her that they had like a strategy that was good for video games as a whole. Right.
It was one of those things where, like, almost by throwing Sega under the bus, they were making the case that the video game industry could self-regulate and did have an ability to discern different sorts of entertainment. But it also,
But also they got to throw their competitor under the bus.
Right.
Yeah. So
at like the largest stage, right?
Yeah. In front of everybody.
Yeah, and so so I have this article up, with me talking with Perrin, but I also, if people have time, if you click on, there's a YouTube link in there that has sort of the full hearings. There was a follow-up hearing in 1994 that's far less interesting because basically the industry got its shit together, made the ESRB, had a rating system, and any sort of push for legislation to sort of encroach on video games fell apart.
Right.
But the 3-hour hearings are especially watching the intro from Lieberman and the other senator who co-chaired it that I'm blanking on, their opening statements are interesting.
Something like that?
Yeah. And just the way they frame video games and use things like marketing to, which the 90s video game marketing was incredibly hyperbolic in terms of how they portrayed violence. And it was just clear that video games are off in their own corner, making tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, and pretending like somehow they managed to get away without a spotlight. And what these hearings did was essentially, I think what I argue in the piece a little bit was it was it was one of the best things that happened to the industry, because had they not had that moment before they went too much further along, maybe they would have had to face more dire consequences. And instead, they got their shit together, made the ESRB, and were able to get the government off their back.
Yeah, one of the things that was interesting, too, about that piece, Patrick, was it reminded me that before the ESRB, there was this, like, fragmented, like, each platform holder had their own, like, internal system that wasn't really anything other than, like, a loose advisory system. Like, there was no relationship with retailers. There was no, like, actual, like, decision to say if you were under 18 or under 17, you couldn't buy this or this game. Like, it was just this whole mess of different rating stickers.
Yeah, it was weird. Like, Sega had their own voluntary rating system, and Nintendo didn't do a rating system, but just made the argument that they were content sort of like gatekeepers, and that if you bought something on Nintendo, the reason they had things like the seal of quality, which was a gold sticker that was on the box, like things like that were meant to indicate to families, if you buy a Nintendo platform, those games will not appear on our platform, and you don't have to worry about what's in the games, because we've done that for you, which is not a great system. And Sega's being voluntary is also not a great system. And so all that stuff kind of came together in a way that's like, okay, there's got to find something that works with retailers, is punishable in some way if retailers don't participate, and that also gets everyone on board in a sort of non-platform specific way. I
do wonder if we'll see a revision of any of this stuff going forward in the near, or not just of the ESRB specifically, but like I go on Steam and I like click on new games, and it's like, oh, like half of these are hentai games now. Yeah. Like censored hentai games, but like that's a huge portion of the Steam like store shelf now. And it feels like there's another conversation waiting to happen around sex in games, around violence in games again, in hopefully a more mature way that's about opening that space up but still keeping it regulated. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder if VR is actually going to be sort of what pushes that forward. Being like, there's another step here of you're embodying the person sort of doing this violence as opposed to sort of seeing it on a screen. I wonder if that's going to be the tact they take. I'm not sure.
Like if you were the sort of person who wanted to have that conversation in a really aggressive way, VR is a great excuse for that. Yeah. And that's frustrating, because I think that there are conversations to be had around media content, but not ones that are like really unnuanced and just like
this
dismissive.
Is bad.
Right, exactly.
Like
fuck out of here with that. But let's have that other conversation and let's be responsible about this media that we love. In the same way that like we should be if you love cars, you should be responsible about emissions and about like making sure that you're not going 60 miles over the speed limit. Let's reach that common ground, but let's have a conversation about what that common ground is.
Yeah.
Well, and two, just one sort of final thought, like to kind of thread it to the ESRB. The ESRB is in some ways endangered in the sense that Steam, which is essentially where pretty much everyone, if I'm going to paint with a broad brush, buys their games on PC, it is not a requirement to have an ESRB rating to sell on Steam. It is not a requirement to have an ESRB rating to release something on the Google Play or the App Store.
Sure.
Now, there are sort of content ratings and guidelines on there that developers have to put, but it is far different than submitting it to sort of a holistic organization that's meant to represent the video game industry. If anything, it seems like we're headed towards a world in which, as we move to more digital and retail becomes less of a factor, in which there are sort of what happened originally, which was that we're going to have platform specific approaches to ratings, and now maybe because ratings are just so ingrained, it won't matter as much. It won't become a thing, but it's kind of fascinating to look at it going back to, in some ways, what it used to be, and that 20 years from now, maybe the ESRB ratings are only for the biggest games that are sold at retail, and everything else just kind of does its own thing.
Yeah.
Awesome. I like, Patrick, that the thing that you did now to distract yourself from politics is dig deeper into the history of the politicization of video games.
Well, if I pay attention to anything other than video games, it is politics. Yeah. But even as someone that would self-describe as a political junkie, I am tired of this election and want it to be over. So it's like, it was fascinating to go look at a different time, a different set of subjects, and so I was able to sort of scratch my itch without having to peel my skin off in the same way that I've been doing in the last 2 weeks.
Danielle, what about you? What did you do over the weekend?
Oh my God. Well, I went for pure escapism. I also slept a lot, which was awesome.
That's escapism.
That was good. I liked that. But pure escapism, I watched a whole bunch of Yuri on Ice.
Oh, word.
The extremely, extremely gay ice skating anime, which is about this young man. He's 23. He's sort of at the tail end of his figure skating career, and this other incredibly, incredibly attractive dude who is like also a champion ice skater kind of comes into his life and wants to be his coach, and they have this relationship that is very intense. It is just such a wonderful show. It's actually really cool because the show is actually about sort of the mechanics of figure skating and how you practice and how you figure out a routine and how you choose the music to that routine and how how much it's about expressiveness and dance, and as well as sort of the technical tricks. And also, of course, about these relationships, these very intense, close relationships that Yuri has with his coach and with his friends. I'm new to anime. I have an anime life coach. Let's put it this way. I have an anime life coach. Yeah, it's all Amanda's fault. Who's been showing me like the sports anime because she knows I'm such a little jock, and she's like, "All right, Danielle, I know what you're gonna like." So she got me really into the bike anime, which I know it's probably another bike anime, but
no, that's the bike. If you say the bike anime,
Yowapeda. Damn it, I almost got it. Pedals.
Or Yoa pedal.
Yowapeda, which is also really cool. Mm-hmm. It's a cool bike anime where, again, I'm into it because I'm learning about like the mechanics of cycling and how like, I'm a distance runner. So like sort of adding that in, the strategies of a distance runner and the strategies of like a cyclist who's a sprinter and who's a hill climber and all this stuff. I'm way more into that than like the actual characters, to be honest. Like the characters are cool and I'm excited about them, but I want to learn
stuff.
I want to learn about the sports stuff.
Totally.
I became like I've always played sports. I've always been like a super, super jock, but I only became like a sports fan in the last couple of years where I actually get really interested in the real mechanics, the real nitty gritty of like what a great baseball player does, what a great pitcher does, what a great, athlete of any kind does, really.
Right. What's it mean to succeed in those different spaces?
Exactly.
Both like physically and tactically, and like what the design of it is, and that's really
I've
cool.
only just become really into that. I also went to, this was cool. This was really cool. This is what I did last night. I went to an alt circus pole dancing competition.
Okay.
Which is not really pole dancing in the traditional sense. It wasn't really like about the stripping. It was like an aerial act that had to do with
like a
like
Cirque du
pole.
Soleil.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Which was amazing. And I was like, wow, the human body can move in these ways.
The human body can do a lot of things.
Oh, yeah.
I think next anime season is when we get the pole dancing.
Yes, the pole dancing competition anime. Yeah, I hope so, because I want to hear about the moves.
There's the anime that's out this year that is about like butt fighting on floating things on pools, like girls doing butt fight. That's a thing.
I want to hear about the mechanics of butt fighting.
It's a lot about that.
I want to know all about it.
It's a big thing. There's a really great.
Is it called Cheek to Cheek?
It's not called Cheek to Cheek. I don't know what it's.
Oh,
I don't know. Butt fighting anime. I'll put in Google.
Cheek to cheek.
I do want to shout out a really great article by Jacob Hope Chapman over on Anime News Network called "What's So Gay About Yuri on Ice?"
Oh, good.
It's really a really great deep dive into the ways in which queerness has been used in anime over the years, ranging from like kind of unspoken joke to like implicit like fan service, where it's like, oh, will they, won't they?
Yeah.
Like what this article digs deep into the term queer baiting and like takes a very critical but nuanced perspective on that, on whether or not like, hey, is that kind of dismissive of implicit, of the pleasure of implicit queer relationships? Does every queer relationship in media need to be like consummated with physical?
Right.
Like, and so the thing that they end up kind of walking away with is like one of the things that makes Yuri on Ice so special is that it isn't hiding the fact that these two characters are physically attracted to each other. Like that is a thing that recurs, and not in a way that is like dressed up so much. Though apparently that does still happen sometimes. It
feels like I don't know. It's very much feels like it's building towards maybe something a little more explicit. Like I don't want to spoil anything, but there's sort of a revelation in the most recent episode where there's an explicit use of the L word. They say love, and it's like, oh,
ooh, what's that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? So there's a lot there, and I have strong feelings about queer baiting and whether or not something is queer baiting or not. But I really love this show. It's Really good. It's really beautiful. And I did play a video game.
What did you play?
I played more of Even the Ocean, which I talked about a little bit last time, but it's, oh my God, it's so beautiful.
Well, say it one more time. A thing that someone wrote in and requested was like, hey, when we talk about games, let's shout them out at the beginning and the end, because I always forget that, and it's very useful. Especially because we play weird stuff sometimes that is not easy. It's not like on the top of your head. It's on the tip of your tongue. It's a thing they've never heard of before. So what's it called again?
Okay, it's called Even the Ocean. It's from Analgesic Studios, the folks who made Anodyne, if you know about that game. I played a little bit more of it. It is just a really, really beautiful platformer with a lot going on in sort of the story land, the story level. You can actually play it. One thing that's I really like about this game, it's not something that I'm using, but the folks who made it, and I believe it's a 2-person team, really. They wanted it to be so accessible that you could just kind of play the story. You can skip the really sort of challenging platforming, which, I'm kind of like, why would you want to? It's wonderful. It's very well designed. It's interesting. It has sort of a cool mechanic where you have to balance 2 energies in your body. One makes you jump higher, one makes you jump further horizontally, and you kind of need to use that in these, challenging 2D platformer segments. But they wrote such a cool and personal and very kind of beautiful story that they were like, hey, if you want to just play the story, you can do that too. It's just like a mode in the game that you can do, which is cool. I like that. I like when developers kind of say, play it your way a little bit,
Go for it. Like, that's definitely been one of those things that I've come back to again and again over the last year around, obviously, conversations around difficulty, but also there was a really productive conversation earlier this year about whether or not Dark Souls should have, like, a story
a chill
mode.
Yes.
Which I thought was, regardless of where you come down on it, it was one of the few conversations about Dark Souls that still felt fresh. Because so often the conversations, I love Dark Souls. I will talk about Dark Souls all day, but privately with my friends who also love Dark Souls, because I feel like I've talked out Dark Souls in a real way to an audience that often doesn't care about it, or like on a dedicated podcast. Like, I think something like Bonfireside Chats, which is a great podcast. It's about Dark Souls. You know what you're signing up for. Go listen to it. It's great. Versus just like having the like, oh, did you know that Dark Souls is difficult conversation? Or like, did you know that Dark Souls 1 has a big interconnected world? It's like, yeah, I know. I watched that video. We all watched that video. It's a good video.
6 years, yeah.
Exactly. For the record, the name of the butt fighting anime is Keijo, Keijo, and then 8 exclamation points.
Perfect. That sounds like a butt fighting anime.
It does.
For sure.
The thing about a lot of these sports anime is that they focus on the ways in which different teams compete against each other, and like there's a lot of drama in Japanese, like even in like Japanese wrestling, it's like this, where it's like it's about like the heart of the spirit and the heart of fighting and all of that. And one of the things that I'm curious about is that once the Overwatch League comes into being, if we'll have that same sort of like deep fandom around the New York team versus the Singapore team. Because that's actually, for me, the most interesting story of last week.
Yeah.
Video game news cycle. So BlizzCon happened.
Yes,
I'm going to zoom past all the stuff people actually care about, which is like new Overwatch character, Sombra. She's a hacker. She's a 30-year-old hacker.
She's got a cool haircut. That's been a real thing on the internet, for
she's got an undercut going on.
Yeah.
Well, Diablo 3 expansion, Necromancers.
Yep, that happened.
Patrick, do you like Necromancers?
I mean, generally speaking, sure.
That sounded like Dag coming back
Dag
right
just slipped through. Dag's had some. That's true. I've heard Dag has some feelings about the undead.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, hey, if you, I will point to like the console version of Diablo 3 is really goddamn good.
Yes.
Like I would highly recommend folks go back and play that at some point. I did that during some slow period with games. I did it co-op, but definitely do a co-op by yourself. It's fine, but it is in terms of like a chill co-op game. There is few games better than the console versions of Diablo 3.
But for me, the big news coming out of BlizzCon, the thing that I'm most interested in, on top of all their other, like, here's a game you can go play stuff, is that they are making an esports league for Overwatch that is distinct in many ways from what its competitors are in the space of esports, right? So if you look at the other major esports leagues across genre, from first-person shooters to MOBAs to, everything in between, to RTS games, it tends to be the case, fighting games even, where like there are teams, but those teams are organized around, hardware manufacturers or just around moneyed interests, right? It's just like, oh, this is a company like that is an esports company and they have a team.
The Pornhub team and such.
The Pornhub team and such. Exactly. Shout outs to the Pornhub team.
Yeah.
Good luck this season on whatever game it is you're playing.
Do your thing, folks.
But the way Blizzard is building the Overwatch League is that it's being built around international cities. And part of the way it's doing that is that like it's also offering salaries and benefits to players.
Yeah.
It's all about stability and long-term investment, and less so about the kind of boom bust cycle that you see in a lot of esports. Like one of the things that I've noticed following esports a little bit more closely over the last few months is that you can see some great players who like move from team to team with rapidity. Like that is not that players in traditional sports don't get traded or don't change teams. Of course that happens. Of course there are free agents and all of that. But there's a sort of like, oh, this person was on this team for 6 months. Now that team is gone.
Yeah.
And they've moved on to this other place. And I think that that's exciting in some ways because there can be lots of drama and lots of, this guy's on one team, now he's going against his old friend and blah, blah, blah. Like that stuff's great. But you lose the sort of long tail rivalries that make sports so exciting.
Yeah.
You would never get, like the Cubs of who are the Cubs of the esports world?
Right.
I guess in my traditional Tolstoy is the Tolstoy of the Zulus, the Cubs are the Cubs of esports. But
Nice.
but
Good.
I guess the thing that is exciting about this is that this is for me. And we'll see how they actually execute on any of this, but the promise they're making about Overwatch is Overwatch League or whatever they end up calling it is like, oh, this is the sort of esport that I can imagine following. One, I think Overwatch is really accessible as a game to play in a way that most MOBAs are not. I don't know if either of you have played either a lot of MOBAs or a lot of Overwatch.
More Overwatch than any MOBA. For
yeah,
sure.
I played a bunch of Overwatch. I played probably like 40 hours of Overwatch and then just kind of fell off it just because, unfortunately, I have to play other games.
Yeah, but also Overwatch is. I actually played Overwatch for the first time the other night in a while.
Oh my god!
And
yeah,
it's good. Not for the first time ever. Sorry. First
okay.
time in a
I was
while.
very excited. For
I'd been playing.
I was
played
gonna be
it
like,
all
who do you
summer.
ship? Who do you ship?
Right,
You
Fair
know?
Mercy, obviously.
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah, of
okay,
course.
Perfect.
Come on. But so it's a game that I think is really accessible and is a really fantastic game to get people thinking about things like not just shipping, but also like matchups inside of the design, like the game design sense of just like, oh, who does Pharah match up well against in combat? Like who does Roadhog? Who's a good counter to Roadhog? Who does Genji work well against? Who does he not work well against? And that stuff is really fun to watch in the same way and to figure out in the same way that following sports is. Like in general, for me, like when I was really into the NFL, it was a lot of like, okay, what's this defense about? What's this offensive system about? Oh, this new coach came in from San Francisco and he brought in this whole different style of offense. Let me think about what that's like.
I mean, that's the equivalent of, when people use the term the meta.
Right, totally.
That's what the meta is in the NFL.
Right, totally, 100%. Like, oh, we're seeing, or like you think about, I've said this before, but it was a shame more video game websites didn't write about the Golden State Warriors last year, who like just disrupted the meta badly, and they still didn't walk away as the champions, but like that was a really exciting thing from a pure like gameplay design sense. What Steph Curry was doing, what that whole team was doing was like, oh wow, like they found a way to play that might be OP. Like weird, is that a thing in real sports? And so being able to have those I feel like I can have those conversations about Overwatch despite having only played 40 hours like you, Patrick.
Right, you didn't have to play 600 hours of Dota to be able to even sort of understand kind of what's going on, to be able to have that conversation.
Exactly.
For sure. Yeah.
And then on top of that, the notion that these are players will hopefully be paid well and have benefits is great. And two, the fact that I will be able to buy like a New York whatever like jersey,
the New York Zarias.
The New York Zarias, exactly. That makes me weirdly excited because
it is actually kind of great. Like I like that they're taking this seriously. At least it seems like they're taking it seriously. They're taking it seriously as a real sport, and they're taking it seriously as a, they're supporting this amazing kind of new property.
Mm-hmm.
This Overwatch was sort of one of the first new properties in a very long time for Blizzard, and it's like, oh yeah, we've got a hit here. We're gonna really take it seriously. We're gonna seriously support it, and we're gonna make a whole new kind of league.
An international league.
An international league actually modeled after sort of what works in real life sports.
Right.
And I think that's super rad.
Well, it's because part of what works about the city stuff is like part of what I love about being a fan of the Bears or the Cubs or any of these like Chicago teams is that they are Chicago teams, right? Like if you took the Chicago Bears and you moved them to Minnesota, I would cease to be a Bears fan. Like part of the fandom is part of like the culture where you come from, like the generational handing down of fandom,
Right.
and like
Pride
that
of
is
where
part
you
of
come from, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like intrinsically tied to geography,
Right.
and it is, yes, it is partially talent in the team, but like it is, so much of that is geography and identifying with like the people around you who are also fans of that, because you find that allows you to kind of have a universality of what you're into or what you know about a certain place,
Right.
and it's interesting to see if they are able to successfully apply that to games in some way.
It was, it's one of those things that's taken me a long time to come around on in some ways. I growing up, I was a huge sports fan. I was from South Jersey, which meant I was a Philly fan. I liked pretty much a Philly fan. So I liked the Eagles, and I liked the Flyers, and I liked the Phillies, but I hated the 76ers for some reason. You know what it was? It was like I grew up in the Michael Jordan era. So
There
like,
it is.
Good luck making me like anybody except for Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But at the same time, like I also grew up in the Troy Aikman era, and fuck the Cowboys.
Yeah. Yep.
So
America's team, my ass.
yeah, exactly. Randall Cunningham will just jump all over y'all. Anyway, so the thing, but then I went through a real long phase of like kind of hating local sports pride, of just like, I still kind of do a little bit of just like whenever anyone's like, oh, we did this. And it's like, were you part of the team? Did you call that play?
Yeah.
Were you the one who got that tackle?
You hit that ball.
You hit that ball.
Yeah.
But I've totally, I think I've come around on the notion of like, so for a long time I hated it because it was like, it felt arbitrary and it felt nationalistic, or like, it felt similar to the sort of like empty nationalism of like, oh, I like it because it's me. It's where it's mine, and therefore it's mine, and therefore it's good and better than yours, which is bad and not mine and othered.
There's also some gross stuff. Like,
Yes.
coming from where I come from, the Boston sports fandoms have some issues.
Of course.
Like, let's be
Absolutely.
real. There's some gross. I
But
still
I
feel an
do-
affinity towards those
Totally.
teams, but like, I do not want to be a racist Red Sox fan. Like, that is
Sure.
not
But the hope
what I
is-
want to be in my life.
The hope is that you could be a Red Sox fan that is not racist,
Exactly.
and hopefully
Of course.
push those people to not be so shitty.
Be like, let's grow up.
Don't be a shitty racist Red Sox. Don't be a
Exactly.
shitty racist anything fan. I
Just
know
don't be a shitty racist.
soccer fandom in the or in Europe,
There's
throughout
stuff
Europe
there,
has
yeah,
a lot of similar things.
for sure.
But I do think as I get older that there is a common material connectivity to you and the places you've decided to or have wound up living, and
Yes.
like being able to have that common ground, being able to like root for the Knicks even though you're completely different from them, everybody else on the subway with you, is a sort of joiner that helps to create and reflect a local city character. And I like having more. I would like more of those things. In the same way that I would love it if the same reason I want museums to be well funded in a city. It's like, oh, this is part of what the city is. Like, this is part of the culture of the city that we can all like be proud that we have a fucking kick-ass museum. Oh, we have really great parks. We have a really great, like part of that is like, I want to have a really great football team, just like I want to have a really great ballet. Like,
Yes.
So like when you start thinking about it as like a cultural institution that the whole city can join around, I'm like, yeah, actually, that'd be cool if on top of being able to say like we have the Met, if I could be like, we got the best fucking Overwatch team, come get us. Like,
Goddamn right.
so that's me. Get ready. I'm gonna be decked out. I'm gonna get whatever the New York Zarya's gear is. I'm hoping it's not just
Fake
character
pink hair.
names. I hope it's
Well,
like
I'm sure it will. Yeah.
I don't know what it's gonna be. I don't know. I hope it's cool. I hope it's weird and sci-fi shit. I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Hey, that's the thing. Naming those teams. It's going to be a whole,
let's not talk about
whole
names.
thing.
I'm close. I have a name I like for
Yeah.
the podcast.
Yes.
But I'm not quite ready to commit to it yet.
Yeah. Almost there.
Hopefully by Friday.
Hopefully, my hope is like my hope is Friday. We're able to be like, here's the name and like a logo,
Yeah.
or like a not a logo. We don't no more logos, but like a graphic.
Yeah, little thing.
Does anybody have anything else, or should we dip into that old question bucket?
We should dip.
Is well, let's one just to kind of Danielle. Do you have any interest in buying a PlayStation 4 Pro? Austin's got. I guess you both have access to one.
Yeah,
in
we
New
have
York,
one. We
but-
have one under my desk at work. I didn't bring it home because I didn't think I'd have a 4K
I only want one because I desperately need another PS4 because I had a whole thing this weekend. Me and my girlfriend had we had to go through our entire PS4. We share a PS4. She's also a game journalist. Everybody who knows who she is fine. And like we are at the point where we have like 8 big ass open world games on that PS4, and I wanted to download Call of Duty, and I got the cool package that has both the new Infinite Warfare and the older game Modern Warfare
Right.
remastered, and it was like it was like Sophie's Choice. It was like, oh no, I'm not done with Mafia. She's like, I'm not done with Witcher.
Right.
And I was like, oh, are you done with Battlefield? She's like, no, I'm not done with Battlefield. We had to have a whole thing. So I'm like, I just need
another console.
I just need another console. It might as well be the Pro. Is
Right.
kind of at this point.
Yeah, why not? Right? I like if it's available. I need to figure out if yeah, we'll see. I'm going to test it out this week, and I'll hopefully on Friday be able to talk a little bit about what my experiences are.
Yeah.
I wish there was more support for it, is what I'll say. Is that like when I look at the list of games that are supported, it is not as overwhelmingly positive. Not positive. There aren't that many. It's like Infamous Second Son and First Light have some good HDR stuff.
Sure.
Modern Warfare Remastered, I think, looks better. Res Infinite is something I'm curious about, but like I want to be able to put anything in there and have it be better.
Yeah.
And that is not currently the case. All right, so how about this? There's actually something I wanted to do, which is that like part of the problem with the question bucket, and there are a couple, I admit. I'm not throwing out the question bucket. I'm not throwing out the questions with the bathwater here. I'm keeping it.
Yeah.
Keeping it. We'll come back to the question bucket maybe next week.
You need the bucket for the bathwater.
Totally. You need the bucket. Hashtag need the bucket. But a thing that happens is like we keep pulling these old questions, and people are writing us new questions all the time. So here's I'm just going to pick the top email that came into our questions thing, and we're going to answer. It's still picking from the bucket. I'm just like skimming from the top.
Yeah.
What if we make that like one Mondays?
Right.
It's a new one.
It's a new one.
There we go.
Fridays, we'll let old emails possibly be
Exactly.
make it
That's
in.
fair.
Totally. So this is right from the top. Ready? Okay. Hi, dear. Good day to you. This is Malene from New Concepts in China. We specialize in many popular baby products. Want to check to see if you have a chance to do business with you. No, that's not.
Yeah.
I think that's spam.
I don't think that one was a
worked.
real question.
I should have looked to see if it was a real question. That was not. I should not just pick the top one, I guess. In retrospect.
The bucket had some value, some utility.
It did. I guess it did have something. All right. Take two. A lot of people sent in names. Thank you for sending in names. A lot of the people sent in names that we already like vetted, believe it or not.
Yeah.
All right. This is a good one. This is from Craig Parker, who writes, my question is, do you think VR being named virtual reality evokes expectations that are beyond the capabilities of the technology, at least currently? Is the fact that VR's branding is going toe-to-toe with reality itself, giving what success VR tech has a sour impression because of its limitations compared to the boundlessness of the real world, and that we expect too much? And in a broader sense, do you think that games that try to evoke a scope greater than the sum of their parts suffer because they will always be unfairly compared to the grandiosity of human imagination? For example, No Man's Sky tried to bill itself as something so expansive and infinite in scope that people imagined the scope of every facet of the game to be as expansive, and many were disappointed. Anyway, I hope you keep up the good work. I'm going to continue perusing all of the great work you were putting together. I worked really, really hard not to use the word content in that sentence.
Very good. Good work,
Appreciate it.
Craig.
Shout outs to Craig Parker. I think I don't know that it's just like I think there are lots of expectations around VR in general. And I wonder how often the word reality seeps into our mind around this. What do you two think?
Yeah, I think it's first and foremost, I don't want games that have anything to do with reality. Like I'm the kind of person who wants the surreality. I want the boundless imagination that he sort of describes at some point. So yeah, I actually do think it's a little bit of a I think it's more of a crutch in terms of it's evoking a 90s vision of virtual reality was a thing we talked about in the 90s, at least if you're a giant nerd.
Right.
And it's sort of evoking a lot of that stuff. It's evoking like older technology that was promising too much and then sort of died a little bit. So I don't know if it's a little bit of a crutch to be sort of relying on that more so than reality. Here's your new reality. Like technology is always hyperbolic. So
of course
we'll see.
Right. Patrick, as our biggest VR fan, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, names don't matter. Branding doesn't. Like it does. Right? Okay, I'm not going to completely eliminate the idea that like names and brands play an influence. But I mean, the biggest console of all time, the Wii.
Right.
Like it was called the fucking Wii.
Yeah.
Like, so yes. Does virtual reality possibly sort of play a part? Maybe have unrealistic expectations, but I don't like if VR fails. It's not because it's called virtual reality,
right?
And I think there are much larger in terms of the hierarchy of forces working against VR becoming mainstream. I also think most people don't call it virtual reality. I think most people call it VR,
at this
which
point.
actually sounds a lot cooler than virtual reality.
I will say though that I think that the things that succeed the most so far for me in VR experiences are the ones that don't try to be quote unquote virtual reality, right? Like they're the ones that want to be a little more out of the box or a little bit more absurd and surreal, like you said, Danielle. Like I think about Area X in Res Infinite, or even like Job Simulator, which is like playing at the notion of virtual reality, even, right? Like the whole conceit around Job Simulator is that you put on a VR helmet and then go into an absurdly rendered version of quote unquote the past reality. And so I hope that the people who are making, I want the people who are technically good at making VR to not feel like what they need to do is make just purely human experiences. But you're right, Pat. Well, I guess that's where I think it could affect things, right? Which is that like if what people are dumping their resources into is like this needs to look lifelike, then I'm not sure that's the way to go to get the things that convince people that VR has a future.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Though, yeah, I don't know. I also could imagine a world in which we get to where AR is a real thing, like augmented reality, where I could see a company like doing the hit piece attack ad that is like they make virtual reality. They're like they're disconnected from the reality around you. We just augment the reality you're already part of.
I would be shocked if that wasn't already a thing.
I would like
somebody somewhere.
I mean, when you read about these AR companies, who are obviously the people who are doing stuff with HoloLens. Patrick, what's the company that I always not Leap Motion? Is it Leap Motion?
Yeah,
because I always want to say leapfrog, and that is a thing for children, right?
It's an educational toy. Yes.
Leap Motion, which is another kind of in development augmented reality platform. Wired had a really fantastic story about them last year. They kind of do feel like, AR is the future more than VR because of this grounding that it gives you to the real world. That the world around you doesn't disappear; it changes based on what you want to put on top of it. And I think some combination of those two is probably the dream tech. Yeah. But I don't know. We'll see.
You're in a helmet and you're in the real world.
Right. Exactly. Like it sounds silly, but one of the things that I realized a lot via the PSVR helmet is just like, I wish it had a camera on it. I wish I could look around my bedroom while keeping the thing on so that I could adjust something, or so that if my phone rings, I can grab it and look at it, or if I get a text message. And that's stuff that I think the wrinkles will be ironed out probably.
Most likely.
The Vive does do a bunch of that stuff already.
Totally. Vive even has like a phone in it, right? Or like Skype or something. So yeah, I think that's stuff that should be paid attention to, like breaking down the boundary between virtual reality and the reality. And I'm putting scare quotes around all of this because words. But yeah. Craig, thank you so much for writing in. That was a very good question. Not like the spam I got first.
Hey, batting 500 right now.
That's
all right.
That's all right. Yeah. Thank you, Danielle. Exactly. We'll go back to the question bucket on Friday. Things are going to be different on Friday.
Yeah.
It's the whole world.
The world is going to change tomorrow. That is a bananas thought and a true one.
So we're trying to, just so you know, we're trying to put together a stream for tomorrow so you can maybe come be anxious with us. The thing that I'm thinking about is like, we'll do one game that is like a deep, introspective thought about national character or politics or elections or something. And then the next game it will be like really goofy. Just like, please untense yourself, deep breaths. Or maybe we'll do that in like an hour.
Gotta have some
blocks
catharsis in there.
Yeah, we're still figuring it out. We also don't technically have a space to stream from again.
Might be in the bunker.
We might be in, not this bunker, we might be in a different bunker.
Different bunker, good.
We'll figure that out. Patrick, what are you going to be doing for Election Day?
Trying not to drink too early in the day.
Oh boy, just make it to noon. Just make it to noon, buddy. That's
all right. Aye, Captain.
That's what I say, and
Give
then
that a shot.
We'll figure it out from there. Anything else going on the site this week that people should look forward to? Thinking. Here's the thing that I want to shout out because we've been doing it, and maybe people don't know is every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday we have a feature that goes up called Free Play, which is just like 300 short words about a game you can go play for free right now. go check that out because there's some great writers. So far, I think Janine Hawkins, Cameron Kunzelman, and Jack DeKeat have all contributed to it. They're all favorite critics of mine, and it's cool to have them doing this short form thing where it's just like, here's a postcard from a world that you can go spend no money to be in real quick.
Yeah, I think it's cool that, I just think I'm really proud that we're doing some non-commercial stuff.
Me too.
It just makes me happy.
Me too.
It's like,
and so go check that out. You can find that if you click, there's like a little icon on our website, waypoint.vice.com or waypoint.zone or bazinga.zone or digitalpyramids.com.
There you go.
That like opens up a little sidebar and it's in the top left. You hit that and then you go to play, and then everything under that is just like free stuff you can go play right now. What else?
I think I have a interview with the designer of Sunrun Kagura,
Yes.
Awesome.
otherwise known as the Busty Brawler series, in which I was interested in speaking with him because he's one of the few Japanese game designers that sort of openly embraces the fact that his games have like scantily clad women and really infuse action and sexuality, and he's very articulate. You may disagree with why he does it, but he also isn't ashamed of doing that. I'm not even saying that other Japanese designers that do that are ashamed of what they're doing.
But they just haven't spoken publicly about their
They just don't
reasoning.
talk about
Yeah.
it, especially not in Western media.
Right.
And so we had a full interview kind of diving into his process and why he makes the games he does and his views on even criticism of that. And so that'll be sometime this week.
Cool. Look
at
forward
some
to
point,
that.
I'm going to get around to explaining to everyone the conclusion to the Poise saga in Dark Souls
yes.
3.
All right.
Looking
Very
forward to
excited
that.
for that. Let's stay tuned for that because that's a big one.
Yeah.
And then, Patrick, at some point we should talk about effect and cause. I think maybe you and I should talk about it and then put that up as like a IM transcript.
Good.
Okay.
That sounds like a fun. We live in the world of new media. We do whatever we want.
That's
You
right.
can find me at twitter.com/Austin_Walker. Where can people find you, Danielle?
They can find me at Danielle R.I.
What about you, Patrick?
At Patrick Klepek and on Facebook over at P. Klepek.
I'm not going to give Facebook names. I'm done. Oh, we'll see.
We're over it?
We'll see. We'll see on Friday. We're out with Facebook. I don't know. We'll see what happens in the election
Make
tomorrow.
some decisions tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow could change a
Gotta
lot.
be a
Make
ballot
good
measure
decisions.
somewhere.
Shout outs to Tim Barnes, who's producing the podcast. Shout outs to Mitch Rackin, who's our engineer. Shout outs to Bo N, whose song Miss You off of the EP Pale Machine is our theme. You can find out more at boN.info. Bo-n.info. BO-hyphen-en.info. 3 times. There it is. If you're going to email me, just rewind a little bit and say, who made that song? It's Bo N.
Make sure to vote tomorrow.
Yeah, get out there. Go vote. Please go vote about
Please.
the world.
Please vote.
And look into some local and state elections also and know who you should be voting for there also. Things are on the line, it turns out. So check that out. Thank you so much and good luck. Tune in with us tomorrow on twitch.tv/waypoint. Peace.